At my graduation, I said, "You'll come, right?" She answered, "Traffic is," and never finished the sentence. Now I stood alone in the university auditorium at Northwestern, diploma in hand, scanning the sea of proud parents hugging their children, while my phone showed 7 unanswered calls to my mother. The empty seat next to my father spoke louder than any excuse she could fabricate. Around me, families posed for photos, popped champagne, made plans for celebratory dinners. My father cleared his throat awkwardly, camera hanging unused around his neck. The other graduates' mothers rushed forward with flowers and tears. My mother, Harper, was probably at her country club right now, 3rd glass of wine in, telling her friends some elaborate story about a sudden migraine or an unmissable hair appointment. She had done this before, of course. My high school graduation, my scholarship award ceremony, my 21st birthday dinner. Each time with a different excuse delivered in that same bored, dismissive tone, as if my achievements were minor inconveniences interrupting her real life. But this one stung differently. I had specifically asked her 2 weeks ago, confirmed 3 days ago, and called this morning. Traffic is, the words hung in my memory like poison, not even creative enough to finish her lie. My name is Eden. I'm 22 years old, and I just graduated summa cum laude with a degree in biochemistry. What my mother doesn't know, what nobody in my family knows yet, is that I've spent the last 6 months of my senior year doing something she would never expect from her disappointing daughter, something that will change everything. As I walked out of that auditorium past the happy families, I felt the weight of the envelope in my purse, the one containing documents my mother definitely didn't want falling into certain hands. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Growing up in Lake Forest, Illinois, I learned early that my existence was an inconvenience to Harper. My older brother Declan got the attention, the pride, the unconditional love. He was athletic, charismatic, everything our mother valued. I was quiet, studious, more interested in science than social climbing. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" became Harper's favorite refrain, usually delivered with an exasperated sigh while she checked her reflection in whatever mirror was nearest. My parents' marriage had been loveless for as long as I could remember. My father, a successful but quiet patent attorney, retreated into his work while Harper built her empire of country club connections and charity galas that were really just excuses to show off her designer clothes. Declan, 7 years older, left for college when I was 11, and after that, I became even more invisible. The family dynamic was clear. Harper lived for appearances and social status. Dad lived for work, and I lived for the day I could escape to college. The pattern of Harper's neglect was so consistent it became predictable. She forgot my 14th birthday entirely, remembered it 3 days later, and bought me a gift card to a store she knew I never shopped at. When I made the honor roll every semester through high school, she'd glance at my report card and say, "That's nice, dear," before returning to her phone. But she never missed one of Declan's football games. Not a single one. She threw him a massive graduation party at the country club with 200 guests. For my high school graduation, we went to Olive Garden, just the 3 of us. College was supposed to be my escape, but Harper found ways to poison even that. Northwestern was only 40 minutes from home. Close enough that she could theoretically visit, far enough that her absence was a choice. She came to campus exactly twice in 4 years. Once during freshman orientation because the university required parent attendance for a specific session, and once during junior year when she happened to be in Evanston for a luncheon and stopped by for 20 minutes to use my bathroom. The financial dynamic made everything worse. My father paid for my tuition and living expenses, which Harper resented. Such a waste of money. I overheard her tell her sister during Thanksgiving of my sophomore year. She's studying chemistry or biology or something equally useless. She could have gone to community college and lived at home. What made it sting was that I had earned a partial scholarship, reducing the financial burden significantly. But Harper never acknowledged that. To her, any money spent on me was money not spent on her. What really crystallized my mother's cruelty was my 21st birthday last year. Dad had made reservations at a nice restaurant in downtown Chicago. Harper showed up 45 minutes late, already tipsy, and spent the entire dinner on her phone texting with her friends. When the check came, she actually complained about the cost, even though Dad was paying. "For this price, we could have gone somewhere good," she said loud enough for nearby tables to hear. She left before dessert arrived, claiming she had an early morning, even though it was a Saturday. But the graduation situation went beyond her normal neglect. 2 weeks before commencement, I had sat down with her at the house when Dad wasn't home. "Mom, graduation is May 15th at 2 p.m. It's really important to me that you're there." She was scrolling through social media, barely looking up. Sure, I pressed harder. "I'm graduating with highest honors. I'm one of only 12 students in my class receiving the Dean's Medal. I really need you to commit to being there." That's when she looked up, and I saw something in her eyes I'd seen before but never quite named. Contempt. Pure, undiluted contempt. "Eden, you're being dramatic. Of course I'll be there. Stop being so needy." The word needy hit like a slap. 3 days before graduation, I texted her the details again. Time, location, parking information, everything. "Got it," was her entire response. The morning of graduation, I called her while getting ready. Traffic is, she said, and then silence. Not even the courtesy of a complete lie. I called back immediately. It went to voicemail. I called Dad, who was already at the venue saving seats. She said she'd meet us there. He told me, his voice flat with the exhaustion of someone who had made excuses for his wife for 3 decades. She'll come, Eden. She will. But she didn't. As I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, I scanned the audience and saw my father sitting alone in a row with 2 empty seats beside him. One for my mother, one for Declan, who was too busy with work to attend. The university photographer caught me at the podium receiving the Dean's Medal, and I made sure to smile wide. That photo would be useful later. After the ceremony, Dad and I went to lunch at a quiet restaurant. He tried to make excuses for Harper. She's been stressed lately. The charity auction didn't go as planned. I let him talk, but I wasn't really listening. I was thinking about the envelope in my purse, the product of 6 months of careful work. See, while Harper thought I was wasting my time with my useless biochemistry degree, I was actually learning some very practical skills. During my senior year, I took an independent study course in forensic toxicology. My professor, unaware of my personal motivations, taught me how to analyze substances, how to detect trace elements, how to understand what certain combinations of compounds could do to the human body. In my spare time, I volunteered at a lab that did private testing for attorneys and private investigators. I learned how to document findings, how to create court-admissible reports, how to build an airtight case based on scientific evidence, and I put those skills to use. Remember those 2 visits Harper made to my campus? During the junior year bathroom visit, she left her purse in my dorm room for exactly 12 minutes while she freshened up. That was all the time I needed to photograph the contents of her wallet, including 3 credit cards and a medical ID card that revealed something very interesting. She was prescribed Ambien and had been for years, but her prescription showed quantities that didn't match the refill dates, suggesting she was either not taking it as prescribed or getting it from another source. I started paying attention differently after that. During winter break, I noticed pill bottles in her bathroom that weren't there before. During spring break, I found receipts from a pharmacy in a town 40 minutes away. Not our usual one. Why would someone drive 40 minutes to fill prescriptions they could fill locally, unless they were trying to hide something or someone? Through my work-study position at the university's research library, I had access to legal databases. I learned about prescription fraud, about doctor shopping, about insurance fraud. I discovered that someone could theoretically be getting prescriptions from multiple doctors, filling them at different pharmacies, and insurance companies would be very interested in this information, not to mention the medical board, and possibly law enforcement if the quantities suggested potential distribution. But I needed proof. Hard, undeniable proof. So I did something my mother would never expect from her timid daughter. During spring break, when she thought I was visiting a friend, I actually drove back home on a day I knew she'd be at the country club. I used my key, went into her bathroom, and using sterile swabs I'd taken from the lab, collected samples from 3 different prescription bottles. I photographed the labels, documenting the prescribing doctors, the pharmacies, the dates. Back at school, I ran those samples through the equipment in my forensic toxicology independent study. I documented everything with my professor's guidance, though I told him it was a theoretical exercise for a paper on prescription medication overlap in middle-aged women. The results were conclusive. My mother was getting the same medications from 3 different doctors and filling them at 3 different pharmacies. The quantities indicated she was either selling them or had a serious addiction nobody knew about. I compiled everything into a comprehensive report, complete with pharmacy records I obtained through a friend who worked in medical billing, doctor prescribing records I accessed through legal public databases, and my own laboratory analysis. The envelope in my purse contained copies of everything, along with a cover letter to the Illinois Medical Board, the Insurance Fraud Division, and the DEA. But I didn't send it. Not yet. See, I learned something else during my biochemistry degree. Timing matters. In chemistry, you can have all the right ingredients, but if you add them in the wrong order or at the wrong temperature, the reaction fails. I needed the perfect catalyst, the perfect moment for maximum impact. And watching my mother choose her country club over my graduation, watching her not even bother to create a believable excuse, watching my father make excuses for her one more time, I realized the perfect moment was approaching. The country club's annual charity gala was in 3 weeks. Harper had been planning it for months. She was chairwoman this year, her crowning achievement in her social climbing career. Every important person in Lake Forest would be there. The mayor, local celebrities, business leaders, the entire social elite Harper had spent decades courting. She'd already boasted to everyone about the event, about her central role, about how this would finally establish her in the community. That evening, after Dad dropped me back at my apartment near campus, I sat down at my computer and began drafting emails, one to the Illinois Medical Board, one to the Insurance Fraud Investigation Unit, one to the DEA hotline. Each email detailed the evidence I'd collected, attached the relevant documentation, and requested immediate investigation, but I didn't send them. Not yet. I also drafted a letter to the country club's board of directors. It detailed how their chairwoman for the upcoming gala was currently under investigation for prescription fraud and possible drug distribution. It mentioned the potential legal liability of associating the club with someone facing criminal charges. It suggested they might want to reconsider her position before the gala became a public relations nightmare. 2 days after graduation, I received a call from my mother, not to apologize for missing graduation, not to explain her absence, but to tell me she needed me to help with something at the gala. They need extra hands for setup, she said, as if I should be grateful for the opportunity to volunteer my time after she couldn't spare 2 hours for my graduation. It would really help me if you could be there. The audacity was breathtaking. I almost laughed. Sure, Mom, I said sweetly. I'd be happy to help. What date again? June 5th. You'll need to be there by 9 a.m. for setup. And Eden? Wear something appropriate, not one of your frumpy school outfits. She hung up before I could respond. June 5th. 3 weeks away. I looked at my computer screen, at the drafted emails ready to send, at the evidence folder with its damning documentation, at the timeline I'd created showing the pattern of prescription fraud going back at least 2 years. My phone buzzed. A text from Harper. Also bring extra hands if you can. We're short-staffed. Maybe some of your college friends? She couldn't even remember I'd just graduated. Couldn't remember I was done with college, moving on to graduate school in California in the fall. I was still just in college to her, still just the disappointing daughter whose entire existence was a minor subplot in the story of Harper's life. I pulled up my calendar and marked June 4th, the day before the gala. That's when I'd send the emails. The investigations would launch immediately, probably hit the news cycle by that evening or the next morning. By the time the gala started on June 5th, Harper would be dealing with investigators, criminal inquiries, and social devastation. The timing was perfect. The catalyst was perfect. The reaction would be spectacular. My father called that night. Your mother feels terrible about missing graduation. He lied. I could hear the strain in his voice. She wants to make it up to you. Maybe she'll take you shopping before the gala? That's really sweet, Dad, I said, keeping my voice level. But I'm actually pretty busy with my research fellowship. That was true. I'd been accepted into a prestigious summer research program at Stanford, starting in July. My future was secured. My path was clear. And it had nothing to do with Harper or her approval. She does love you, Eden, Dad said quietly. She has her own struggles. I know, Dad, and I did know. I knew exactly what Harper's struggles were. I had them documented in a 40-page report with laboratory analysis and pharmacy records to back it up. I knew more about my mother's secrets than she could possibly imagine. The question that kept me up that night wasn't whether to send the emails. That decision was made the moment Harper said, "Traffic is," and hung up on my graduation day. The question was whether to tell my father first, to give him a warning about what was coming. He'd spent decades making excuses for her, enabling her neglect, choosing the path of least resistance. Did he deserve advance warning? I decided against it. Dad had made his choice long ago. He'd chosen comfort over confrontation, chosen staying married over protecting his daughter from Harper's casual cruelty. He was collateral damage, but he'd earned that position through years of inaction. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about the scholarship ceremony Harper missed sophomore year. I'd won a major national science award with a $10,000 prize. The ceremony was at a hotel in downtown Chicago on a Saturday afternoon. I have book club, Harper said. Book club for a $10,000 award that required me to present my research in front of distinguished professors and scientists. She chose book club. I thought about my 16th birthday when she forgot to pick me up from school, and I waited in the rain for 2 hours before a friend's mother drove me home. Harper was home when I arrived, dry and comfortable, watching television. "Oh, was that today?" she'd said, not even pausing her show. I thought about the Christmas she bought Declan a new car and gave me a clearance rack sweater from a department store. Wrong size, not my style. Still with the final sale, 75% off sticker attached. When I opened it in front of the family, she said, "Well, you're not really a car person anyway." Every memory felt like evidence being logged, documented, added to the case file. And the case file was now complete, ironclad, ready for presentation. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Harper. "Bring a camera for the gala. We'll want photos for the club newsletter." She wanted photos. Documentation of her triumph. The irony was beautiful. "Sure thing, Mom," I texted back. "I'll make sure everything is well documented." She responded with a thumbs up emoji. She had no idea what was coming. No idea that while she'd been shopping for the perfect gala dress and seating chart arrangements, I'd been building a case that would dismantle her carefully constructed social empire brick by brick. I opened my laptop and reviewed the email drafts one final time. June 4th. That was when I'd press send. When the timing would create maximum impact, when all the right ingredients would combine in exactly the right way to produce an irreversible reaction. Harper thought she could miss my graduation and suffer no consequences. She thought I was too timid, too needy, too desperate for her approval to ever fight back. She'd spent 22 years treating me like an inconvenient footnote in her own story. never considering that I might be writing my own narrative all along. One where she wasn't the star. One where she wasn't even a sympathetic character. One where she finally got exactly what she deserved. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in acting. I played the dutiful daughter perfectly, responding to Harper's increasingly demanding texts about the gala with cheerful compliance. She needed me to pick up rental chairs? No problem, Mom. She wanted me to confirm the florist delivery? Already on it. Each interaction was another brick in the foundation of what was coming. Another reason she'd never see the hammer falling until it crushed her completely. What Harper didn't know was that I'd become friendly with Sienna, the country club's event coordinator, during my forced volunteer sessions over the years. Sienna was in her late 20s, sharp as a blade, and had no love for Harper. "Your mother treats me like hired help," she'd confided to me during a setup session 2 years ago. "I have a degree from Cornell in hospitality management, and she talks to me like I'm 12. I reached out to Sienna on a Tuesday 2 weeks before the gala. We met for coffee offsite, away from anyone who might report back to Harper. "I need to tell you something," I said, sliding a thin folder across the table. "But first, you need to know this is about protecting the club, not hurting my mother." That was a lie, of course, but Sienna didn't need to know my real motivations. Inside the folder was a simplified version of my evidence, minus the most damning scientific analysis, just enough to show the pattern. Multiple doctors, multiple pharmacies, overlapping prescriptions for controlled substances. The club's liability insurance won't cover events hosted by someone under investigation for federal drug crimes, I explained, watching Sienna's face pale as she read. "If the news breaks during the gala, it could destroy the club's reputation for years." Sienna's hands shook slightly as she closed the folder. "When is this going to break?" "I'm not sure," I lied smoothly, "but I heard rumors that an investigation is starting soon. I thought the board should know before they're blindsided." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "My mother would be devastated if her gala turned into a scandal. I'm trying to protect her from public humiliation by giving the club time to make other arrangements quietly." It was a beautiful piece of manipulation. Frame it as protecting Harper, appeal to Sienna's professional interests, and let her do the work for me. Sienna promised to take it to the club's board of directors immediately, but discreetly. "They meet on Friday," she said. "I'll present this as a potential liability issue." That Friday, while Harper was getting her nails done, the country club board held an emergency meeting. I knew because I'd asked Sienna to text me when it started. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. "Board voted 8-2 to ask your mother to step down as gala chair. They're citing potential legal complications. She's being notified Monday." Perfect. The dominoes were beginning to fall, and Harper had no idea the first push had come from her own daughter. Monday morning, I was finishing my research fellowship application materials when my phone exploded with calls from Harper. I let the first 3 go to voicemail. On the 4th call, I answered. "Those bastards at the club," she was screaming, actually screaming. "They're removing me from the gala. They said there are concerns about my judgment and potential legal issues." "What legal issues? I haven't done anything." "That's crazy, Mom," I said, injecting confusion into my voice. "What could they possibly mean?" "I don't know. They won't tell me. Just some vague nonsense about liability and ongoing investigations." "There are no investigations. This is character assassination." She was spiraling, her voice climbing higher with each word. "Declan thinks it's probably Melissa Turner behind this. She's always been jealous of me." I almost laughed. Even facing consequences, Harper's first instinct was to blame other women in her social circle, rather than examine her own actions. "Do you want me to come home?" I offered, knowing she'd refuse. "No. I need to handle this myself. I'm calling my attorney right now. They can't just remove me without cause." She hung up without saying goodbye, as always. But Harper's attorney couldn't help her. The country club's bylaws allowed the board to remove event chairs for any reason related to the club's reputation or legal exposure. And the board had documentation now, courtesy of my carefully edited evidence folder. They didn't know the full extent of what was coming, but they knew enough to distance the club from Harper immediately. Over the next few days, the Whisper Network in Lake Forest Society went into overdrive. I heard through a friend's mother that speculation was rampant. Was Harper being investigated by the IRS? Was there an affair? Embezzlement? The vagueness of the board's action created a vacuum that gossip rushed to fill, each theory more damaging than the last. Harper called me Tuesday evening, her voice heavy with what might have been tears. "Eden, someone is spreading lies about me. Terrible lies. People are asking me questions about things that aren't true. If you hear anything, if anyone says anything to you, you'll defend me. Right?" The vulnerability in her voice was new. For the first time in my life, Harper needed something from me, really needed it. Not my free labor for her events, not my compliance with her demands, but my actual support. The daughter she'd ignored for 22 years was suddenly her lifeline. "Of course, Mom," I said softly. "I'll always defend you. We're family." Another lie. Smooth as silk. What Harper didn't know was that I'd already scheduled the real explosion for June 4th, 3 days away. The emails to the medical board, insurance fraud division, and DEA were written, evidence attached, ready to send with a single click. But I'd added something new, a courtesy copy to the Lake Forest Tribune's investigative reporter, along with an anonymous tip about prescription fraud in affluent communities. I'd also done something my mother would never expect. I'd called Declan. My golden child brother had barely spoken to me in years, too busy with his finance job in New York to bother with his little sister. But he answered when I called, probably out of sheer surprise. "Eden, is everything okay?" "Not really," I said, letting my voice crack slightly. "Something's happening with Mom, and I'm worried. People are saying things about investigations and legal problems. Do you know anything about this?" Declan's protective instincts kicked in immediately. "What? No, what are people saying?" I fed him just enough information to make him concerned but confused, the same state Harper was in. "I'm sure it's just gossip," I finished, "but maybe you should call her. She seems really stressed." What I didn't tell Declan was that I'd also compiled evidence of how Harper had spent his college fund. See, my forensic accounting had uncovered something interesting. The money earmarked for Declan's education had been systematically diverted into Harper's personal accounts over the years. Dad had covered Declan's actual expenses from his income, never knowing Harper had raided the dedicated fund for shopping sprees and country club dues. I'd saved that revelation for later. First, destroy Harper's social standing and face her with criminal investigations. Then, when she was at her weakest, reveal to Declan that the mother he worshipped had stolen from him too. Turn her golden child against her just as thoroughly as she'd always dismissed me. June 4th arrived. I woke up at 6 a.m., made coffee, and sat down at my laptop. The emails were ready. All I had to do was click send, but I waited. Timing was everything. Harper had a luncheon at 11 with her remaining friends from the country club, a damage control session where she'd try to spin the narrative in her favor. At 10:45 a.m., 15 minutes before her luncheon, I sent all the emails simultaneously to the medical board, to the insurance fraud division, to the DEA, to the Tribune reporter. Each message contained the full evidence package: pharmacy records, doctor prescribing patterns, my laboratory analysis, photographic evidence, timeline documentation. Then I sat back and waited for the reaction to begin. The response came faster than I'd anticipated. Within an hour, my phone buzzed with a news alert from the Tribune's website: Lake Forest resident under investigation for prescription fraud. The article didn't name Harper directly due to privacy laws, but it detailed enough specifics that anyone in our social circle would know exactly who they meant. A prominent Lake Forest woman and country club member facing multiple ongoing investigations for obtaining controlled substances from several physicians and pharmacies. I screamed into a pillow, letting out genuine emotion for the first time in weeks. Not distress, pure, crystalline joy. My father called at 1:30. "Eden, have you seen the news? Someone leaked something to the Tribune about your mother. She's absolutely hysterical. She had to leave her luncheon early because people were staring and whispering. She's claiming it's all lies, that someone is trying to destroy her reputation." "That's awful, Dad," I said, my voice carefully measured between concern and confusion. "But why would anyone investigate Mom if there wasn't something there? I mean, investigations don't just start from nothing, right?" The silence on his end was deafening, because Dad knew, somewhere in that enabling heart of his, that Harper was capable of exactly what she was being accused of. He'd probably seen signs over the years and chosen to ignore them, just like he'd ignored her treatment of me. "Your mother needs you right now," he said finally. "Can you come home? I have my research fellowship orientation tomorrow, Dad. I can't just drop everything." For once, I was using Harper's own playbook against her. She could skip my graduation because of traffic, but I couldn't come home during her crisis because of actual professional obligations. But I'll call her tonight, I promise. Harper didn't wait for my call. She showed up at my apartment at 4 p.m., having driven herself in what was clearly an agitated state. I'd been expecting this, had prepared for it. When she pounded on my door, I waited 30 seconds before answering, just long enough to make her anxiety spike. She looked terrible. Her makeup was smudged, her hair disheveled in a way Harper would never normally allow. "Eden, someone is trying to destroy me," she said, pushing past me into my apartment. "These investigations are based on lies. I need you to tell me if you've heard anything, if anyone has said anything to you." I guided her to my couch, got her a glass of water, played the concerned daughter perfectly. "Mom, I don't understand. What exactly are they investigating?" "They're claiming I got prescriptions from multiple doctors," she said, and I noticed she didn't say it was false, just that they were claiming it. "But lots of people see multiple doctors. I have a regular physician, a specialist for my migraines, a dermatologist who prescribed something for anxiety-related skin issues. There's nothing illegal about that. Except there was, when the medications overlapped, when the doctors didn't know about each other, when the quantities exceeded any legitimate medical use." But I let her talk. Let her build her house of cards. "The DEA actually called me," Harper continued, her voice breaking. "The DEA, Eden, like I'm some kind of drug dealer. They want me to come in for an interview next week. My attorney says I should cooperate fully, but what if they're trying to trap me?" "Did you do anything wrong, Mom?" I asked, looking directly into her eyes. She looked away. "Of course not. I may have occasionally forgotten to tell one doctor about prescriptions from another doctor. But that's not fraud. That's just Poor communication. Poor communication. That's how she was framing systematic prescription fraud that I'd documented over 2 years. I wanted to laugh, but instead I reached out and took her hand. Then you have nothing to worry about. The truth will come out. What Harper didn't know was that the truth was already out. The medical board had received my complete evidence package and was legally required to investigate immediately. The insurance fraud division had documentation showing she'd billed for medications she'd obtained through cash payments at different pharmacies, avoiding the insurance company's automatic duplicate prescription alerts. The DEA had evidence of controlled substance quantities that exceeded any legitimate medical purpose, and the Tribune reporter had already called the country club for comment. By tomorrow morning, the story would be front page with Harper's name included because the investigations were now confirmed and public record. Her carefully constructed social empire was burning, and she was sitting in my apartment begging her disappointing daughter for help. "Mom," I said softly, "can I ask you something? Why did you miss my graduation?" She blinked, confused by the change in topic. "What, Eden? That's not important right now. I'm facing serious allegations. You said traffic is," and then hung up. "You didn't even finish the excuse. My graduation from Northwestern, summa cum laude, and you couldn't even finish your excuse." Her face hardened, the vulnerability disappearing. "This is hardly the time for your victim routine. I'm dealing with a crisis here, and you're bringing up ancient history from 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks. My entire 4 years of college achievement reduced to ancient history that happened 3 weeks ago. The mask had slipped completely. Even in her moment of need, Harper couldn't fake maternal care for more than a few minutes. "You're right," I said, standing up. "This is about your crisis, and I'm sure you'll handle it just like you've handled everything else, by yourself, without needing anyone's help." I walked to my apartment door and opened it. "I have work to do for my fellowship. Call me when the DEA interview is scheduled. I'll try to be there for you." Harper stared at me like I'd slapped her. In her world, I was supposed to drop everything, comfort her unconditionally, subordinate my life to her emergency. The fact that I was dismissing her, using her own tactics against her, didn't compute. "Fine," she said coldly, gathering her purse. "I should have known you'd be useless when I actually needed you. Just like always. Just like always." The daughter she'd ignored for 22 years was useless when she finally needed something. The irony was so perfect, I had to bite my lip to keep from smiling. After she left, I checked my email. The medical board had responded to my evidence submission, confirming they'd opened an investigation and would be contacting the physicians I'd identified. The insurance fraud division had sent an automatic acknowledgement of my complaint. Most importantly, the Tribune reporter had replied to my anonymous tip. "Thank you for this information. We're running a full story tomorrow with on-the-record confirmation from investigating agencies. If you're willing to be interviewed, please contact me." I wouldn't be interviewed, of course. Anonymous tips stayed anonymous, but knowing the full story was running tomorrow, with Harper's name and photograph, was deeply satisfying. That evening, Declan called. "Eden, what the hell is going on with Mom?" She called me sobbing about DEA investigations and prescription fraud. "Is this real?" "I don't know all the details," I said carefully, "but the Tribune is running a story tomorrow. The investigations seem to be legitimate." "How is this even possible? Mom's not a drug addict. She's not selling pills. This has to be some kind of mistake." Declan's voice was defensive, protective of the mother who'd always protected him. "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe we don't know her as well as we thought we did." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means people can have secrets, Declan. People can do things their families never know about." I paused, letting that sink in. "Did you know she didn't come to my graduation?" "She said traffic is," and hung up. Didn't even finish the excuse. "She told me she was there," Declan said slowly. "She texted me a photo of you in your cap and gown. She took that photo from my Facebook page." "Declan, she was never there." Dad sat alone in a row with 2 empty seats, one for her and one for you. The silence stretched. "Finally, I was working. I told you I couldn't get time off. You're managing director at your firm, Declan. You could have taken half a day if you wanted to. You just didn't want to." I wasn't angry, just stating facts, but that's okay. I know where I rank in this family. I've always known. "Eden, the DEA doesn't investigate people for no reason," I said, cutting him off. "The medical board doesn't open investigations based on gossip. Whatever Mom did, she did it, and now she has to face the consequences." I hung up before he could respond. Let him sit with that. Let him start questioning the mother he'd always believed was perfect. Plant the seeds of doubt that would grow into something larger when I revealed the stolen college fund later. June 5th arrived, gala day. Except Harper wasn't the chairwoman anymore. She wasn't even invited. The Tribune's front page featured her photograph, a professional headshot from the country club directory under the headline, "Lake Forest Socialite Faces Federal Drug Investigation." The article was devastating. It detailed the multiple doctors, the different pharmacies, the overlapping prescriptions for controlled substances. It quoted an anonymous source from the DEA saying the investigation was comprehensive and ongoing. It mentioned the country club's decision to remove her from the gala chairmanship due to potential legal liability. Most damaging, it included quotes from people in Lake Forest's social circle, carefully anonymous quotes from longtime friends expressing shock and betrayal. People Harper had considered her inner circle were already distancing themselves, protecting their own reputations. My phone rang at 7 a.m. Harper screaming incoherently. I let it go to voicemail. She called back immediately. Voicemail again. On the third call, I answered. "How could you?" she shrieked. "You did this. You destroyed me. Everything I've built, everyone I know has seen this article. My phone won't stop ringing. The club is talking about revoking my membership entirely. You vindictive little—" "Mom," I said calmly, cutting off whatever insult she was about to hurl. "I didn't write that article. I didn't conduct those investigations. I didn't prescribe medications to you from multiple doctors without proper coordination. If you're facing consequences, it's because of your own actions. You think you're so smart, don't you?" Her voice dropped to something poisonous. "You think you've won something here, but you're still the same pathetic, needy girl who couldn't even get her own mother to attend her graduation." And there it was, even cornered, even facing federal charges. Harper's instinct was to wound me, to remind me of my place in her hierarchy of importance. "You're right, Mom," I said. "I couldn't get my mother to attend my graduation, but I did get summa cum laude. I did get the Dean's Medal. I did get accepted to Stanford's graduate program with full funding, and I did get the satisfaction of watching you realize that the daughter you ignored for 22 years is the only one who actually understood who you really were." I hung up before she could respond. Then I blocked her number. Blocked Dad's number too, because he'd be calling soon to make excuses for her, to beg me to help smooth things over, to play my assigned role of family doormat one more time. Instead, I got dressed in my favorite outfit, grabbed my camera, and drove to Lake Forest. The country club gala was tonight, and while Harper wasn't chairwoman anymore, I'd been invited in my own right by Sienna. "You tried to protect the club," she'd said when she extended the invitation. "The least we can do is let you enjoy the event your mother worked so hard to plan." The irony was exquisite. I'd be attending Harper's gala as a guest while she sat home in disgrace, probably watching the news coverage of the investigations multiply. The event she'd planned for months as her crowning social achievement would go on without her, and I'd be there documenting every moment. Justice, I'd learned in my biochemistry studies, was just chemistry by another name. The right elements, combined at the right time, in the right proportions, producing an inevitable reaction. And the reaction was just beginning. The country club looked spectacular. Harper had planned every detail perfectly, never knowing she'd be banned from attending her own event. Crystal chandeliers reflected off silver and white decorations. A 12-piece orchestra played in the corner. Chicago's social elite mingled with champagne glasses, dressed in designer gowns and tuxedos. The mayor was there. Local celebrities. Business magnates. Everyone who mattered in Lake Forest society. Everyone except Harper. I moved through the crowd in a midnight blue dress I'd bought specifically for this moment, my camera capturing the scene. Sienna found me near the dessert table. "Your mother called 17 times today begging to be let in," she said quietly. The board was adamant. "She's not welcome at the club anymore, period." "That's probably for the best," I replied. "Given the ongoing investigations, there's more." Sienna glanced around to make sure we weren't overheard. "The DEA contacted the club this afternoon. They're going to be interviewing staff members about whether Harper ever brought questionable substances to events. Apparently, someone provided them with a detailed timeline of her activities here over the past 2 years. That someone was me. I documented every event Harper attended, every time she'd visited the club bathroom for extended periods, every interaction that seemed off, all submitted as part of my comprehensive evidence package. "That's thorough of them," I said neutrally. The evening proceeded beautifully. Dinner was served, speeches were given by the new event chairwoman. Donations were pledged to the club's chosen charities. I sat at a table with other young professionals, including several people I'd gone to high school with whose parents were club members. They all knew who I was, knew what had happened with Harper. "It must be difficult," one woman said carefully, "with your mother's situation." "Actually," I said, taking a sip of champagne, "it's quite liberating. Turns out when someone shows you who they really are, believing them is the kindest thing you can do for yourself." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You did this. You destroyed your own mother. You'll regret this for the rest of your life." Harper had gotten a new phone or was texting from someone else's. I deleted it without responding. There was nothing she could say that would touch me anymore. The girl who'd craved her mother's approval had died somewhere around hour 2 of waiting for Harper to show up at graduation. What remained was someone who understood that blood relation didn't obligate you to accept abuse. Around 9 p.m., my father appeared in the club's lobby. I saw him through the ballroom's glass doors, arguing with security. He was trying to get in, probably to confront me on Harper's behalf. The security team held firm, explaining this was a private event, and he wasn't on the guest list. I walked out to the lobby. "Dad, what are you doing here?" He looked exhausted, aged 10 years in the past week. "Eden, your mother is at home having a complete breakdown. The DEA called her in for an interview tomorrow. Her attorney says things look very serious. She needs her family right now, and you're in here at a party." "It's a charity gala," I corrected. "And yes, I'm here. Harper spent months planning this event. Someone should enjoy her work." "How can you be so cold?" His voice cracked. "This is your mother we're talking about. Whatever she did, whatever mistakes she made, She's still your mother. Is she? I tilted my head, genuinely curious. Because mothers usually attend their children's graduations. Mothers usually remember their children's birthdays. Mothers usually show up when it matters. Harper failed at all of those things, but now that she's facing consequences for her own actions, suddenly I'm supposed to forget 22 years of neglect and rush to her side? She's made mistakes. She committed crimes, Dad. Federal crimes. This isn't about forgetting my birthday or missing my graduation. This is about systematically defrauding insurance companies, deceiving multiple physicians, and obtaining controlled substances illegally. Those are her choices, her actions, her consequences. I raised you better than this, he said quietly. No, I shook my head. You didn't raise me at all. You buried yourself in work while Harper treated me like an inconvenient obligation. You made excuses for her every single time she hurt me. You chose her over me from day one, and now you're doing it again. I stepped back toward the ballroom door. The answer is no, Dad. I won't help her. I won't visit her. I won't stand by her side while she faces the legal system. She's on her own, just like she left me on my own every time I needed her. She's your mother, he shouted, loud enough that several valets turned to look. Biologically, I agreed, but that's where it ends. Enjoy the rest of your evening, Dad. I have a gala to attend. I walked back into the ballroom, leaving him standing in the lobby. Through the glass doors, I watched him stand there for a long moment before finally turning and leaving. He'd made his choice decades ago. Now he'd have to live with it. The gala continued past midnight. I danced. I networked. I collected business cards from people who were impressed by my upcoming Stanford fellowship. Nobody mentioned Harper except in hushed tones of scandal and disapproval. Her name had become toxic in the social circle she'd spent decades cultivating. As the evening wound down, Sienna pulled me aside one final time. The board wanted me to thank you, she said. Your warning gave us time to distance the club from your mother before this became a massive scandal. We're grateful. I was just trying to protect an institution my family has been part of for years, I said, the lie smooth and practiced. Driving home that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of seeking Harper's approval, of trying to earn love from someone incapable of giving it, had lifted completely. I'd spent my entire life as her emotional punching bag, and now I'd punched back with devastating precision. My phone buzzed with another unknown number. This time it was Declan. Mom told me what you did, how you turned in the evidence, how you destroyed her reputation intentionally. I can't believe my own sister would be so vindictive. We're done, Eden. Don't contact me again. I pulled over and typed a response. Check your trust fund account, Declan, the one Dad set up for your college expenses that Harper was supposed to manage. Then ask yourself who the real villain is in this family. I sent it along with the financial documents showing how Harper had siphoned Declan's college fund over the years. Let him discover that his perfect mother had stolen from him too. Let him realize that her corruption went deeper than prescription fraud, that she'd betrayed everyone in the family while playing the role of devoted wife and mother. His response came 20 minutes later. Just one word. What? She stole from you for years. I wrote back. Used your education fund for country club dues and shopping sprees, while Dad covered your actual expenses without knowing. You worshipped her, and she robbed you blind. But sure, I'm the villain for exposing her crimes. No response after that. I could imagine Declan sitting with his laptop, pulling up the trust fund statements, seeing the withdrawals, the pattern, the theft. His golden goddess of a mother had feet of clay after all. I drove home and slept better than I had in months. The DEA interview happened on June 7th. I only knew because Dad called me from a blocked number, probably knowing I wouldn't answer if I saw his name. Your mother was questioned for 4 hours, he said without preamble. They have evidence of prescription fraud going back 3 years. Her attorney says they're building a case for federal charges. Okay, I said simply. Okay, his voice rose in disbelief. That's all you have to say? Your mother could go to prison. Then she should have thought about that before committing federal crimes. I was making breakfast, balancing the phone on speaker while I scrambled eggs. Dad, I need to go. I have orientation at Stanford next week, and I'm packing. How did they even find out about all of this? He demanded. The evidence they showed her was incredibly detailed. Medical records, pharmacy receipts, laboratory analysis of pill bottles. Someone had to have provided all of that. Someone who wanted justice, I replied. Maybe you should ask yourself why Harper was doing these things in the first place instead of focusing on who reported it. It was you. His voice went flat. You're the one who turned in your own mother. I stopped scrambling eggs. The moment of truth had arrived. Earlier than I'd planned, but I was ready. Yes, I said simply. I spent 6 months documenting her prescription fraud. I collected physical evidence, analyzed it in a forensic toxicology lab, and compiled a comprehensive report. Then I submitted it to every relevant authority simultaneously. The silence on his end was absolute. Why would you do this? He finally whispered. Because she said traffic is, and hung up on me on my graduation day. Because she spent my entire life treating me like I don't matter. Because she's a criminal who was getting away with it while pretending to be a pillar of the community. Because I could. I resumed cooking, my hands steady. And because watching her face consequences for her actions is the most satisfying experience of my life. You're sick, he said. You've destroyed this family over a grudge about a graduation ceremony. No, Dad. Harper destroyed this family years ago. I just documented it. I plated my eggs. And for the record, it wasn't just about graduation. It was about 22 years of neglect, cruelty, and emotional abuse that you enabled by making excuses for her. You're just as guilty as she is. Don't contact me again, he said, voice shaking. You're not my daughter anymore. I haven't been your daughter for a long time, I replied. You made sure of that by choosing Harper over me every single day of my life. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up and blocked his number too. The Harrison family had officially imploded, and I felt nothing but relief. The criminal charges were filed 2 weeks later. Federal indictment for prescription fraud, insurance fraud, and illegal possession of controlled substances. The Tribune ran another front-page story with Harper's mugshot from her booking photo. She looked haggard, broken, nothing like the polished socialite who'd ruled Lake Forest society. The country club formally revoked her membership. Her friends publicly distanced themselves in social media posts about the importance of integrity and following the law. The charity boards she'd served on asked for her resignation. Her entire social empire, built over decades, collapsed in less than a month. Declan finally called me, his voice hollow. I went through the trust fund records like you said. She took over $200,000 over 10 years. Money that was supposed to be mine, that Granddad set aside specifically for my education. Dad never knew because he was paying my expenses directly. I know, I said. I found that during my investigation. I was going to tell you eventually. You used it as a weapon against me when I took her side. He didn't sound angry, just exhausted. Yes, I admitted, because you needed to understand that Harper's corruption wasn't just about prescription drugs. She betrayed everyone who trusted her, including you. Especially you, actually. You were her favorite, and she still stole from you. I called her after I found out, Declan said. She claimed she was going to pay it back, that it was just temporary borrowing. But the withdrawals go back to when I was in high school. She never intended to return it. No, I agreed. She didn't. I'm testifying at her trial, he said suddenly, about the trust fund theft. The prosecutor contacted me, said it establishes a pattern of fraud. I'm going to tell them everything. The golden child was turning on the goddess. The transformation was complete. Good, I said simply. Harper's trial was set for October. In the meantime, she and Dad separated. He moved into a hotel, unable to look at her anymore, according to the divorce papers he filed. The house in Lake Forest went up for sale, needed to cover legal fees and potential restitution. Harper's attorney argued for probation given her lack of criminal history, but the prosecutor pushed for prison time given the systematic nature of the fraud. I watched it all unfold from California, where my Stanford fellowship had begun. My new life was everything I'd dreamed of. Challenging research, supportive colleagues, professors who valued my work. Nobody here knew about Harper or the scandal. I was just Eden, brilliant biochemist with a bright future. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Declan testified about the stolen trust fund. Former doctors testified about Harper's deception. Pharmacists testified about her using cash to avoid detection. My evidence was presented in exhaustive detail. The pill bottle analysis, the pharmacy records, the prescribing patterns. Harper's attorney tried to paint her as a victim of addiction, someone who needed help rather than punishment, but the prosecution presented evidence that she'd been selling excess pills to other country club members, turning her prescription fraud into a profit enterprise. That detail I hadn't known about, but it didn't surprise me. Harper had always been enterprising. The jury deliberated for 2 days, guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge was harsh. Mrs. Harrison, you systematically defrauded multiple institutions and individuals over several years. You stole from your own son's educational trust. You sold controlled substances illegally. You showed no remorse until facing consequences. This court sentences you to 5 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You will also pay full restitution to all affected parties. 5 years. Harper was 51 years old. She'd be 56 when released, her social standing destroyed, her marriage over, her children estranged, her reputation annihilated. Everything she'd built, everything she'd valued, gone. I didn't attend the trial or sentencing. I didn't need to. The news coverage was comprehensive, and seeing Harper's face in the courtroom photos, pale and defeated, was satisfaction enough. Dad called from a blocked number 1 final time. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. I hope you're happy, he said. Your mother is going to prison. The house is sold. I'm filing for bankruptcy because of the legal fees. The family you were born into is completely destroyed. I am happy, I said honestly, because the family I was born into was already destroyed, Dad. It was destroyed every time Harper ignored me, every time she chose her social calendar over her daughter, every time you made excuses for her. I didn't destroy this family. I just made visible the destruction that was already there. You're going to regret this someday, he said. When you're older, when you have children of your own, you'll understand family bonds and you'll regret what you've done. No, I said. I won't, because I'm never going to treat my children the way Harper treated me. I'm never going to enable abuse the way you did. And I'm never going to regret holding someone accountable for their crimes just because we share DNA. Goodbye, Eden, he said. Goodbye, Dad. This time when I hung up, I knew it was truly final. The Harrison family as I'd known it was over, and I'd never felt more free. 2 years later, I stood in my Stanford laboratory wearing a white coat, analyzing compounds for my doctoral thesis. My research on forensic toxicology detection methods had earned recognition in my department. The skills I'd developed to expose Harper had become the foundation of my academic career. Irony at its finest. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Harper had been moved to a minimum security facility after 18 months for good behavior. The Tribune article included an interview with her, clearly arranged by her attorney to generate sympathy for early release consideration. "I made mistakes," she was quoted as saying. "I lost myself in prescription medications and made choices I regret. I hope someday my daughter will find it in her heart to forgive me." I deleted the email without finishing it. My daughter. Even in prison, even facing the consequences of her actions, Harper couldn't say my name, couldn't acknowledge me as a specific person. I was just my daughter, the disappointing afterthought who'd destroyed her perfect life. That afternoon, I had coffee with my research advisor, a brilliant woman named Dr. Chen who'd become something of a mentor. She'd heard vague details about my family situation over the 2 years we'd worked together. "How are you doing?" she asked. "With your mother's upcoming parole hearing?" "I'm not involved," I said simply. "She'll serve her full sentence or get early release based on her own merits. I don't plan to submit any letters on her behalf." "And your father? Your brother?" "Haven't spoken to either in 2 years. Declan sends occasional emails trying to rebuild bridges, but he's still loyal to Harper fundamentally. Dad is somewhere. Last I heard, he remarried, someone he met at a support group for families of incarcerated people." I sipped my coffee. They made their choices. I made mine. "No regrets?" Dr. Chen asked carefully. "None," I said honestly. "I documented crimes that were being committed. I reported them to appropriate authorities. The legal system did its job. Harper's consequences are proportional to her actions. Where's the regret in that?" Dr. Chen nodded. "I asked because some people in the department have heard rumors about what happened. There's been talk about whether it was ethical for you to investigate your own family member. And what do you think?" I met her eyes directly. "I think family relationships are complicated," she said. "I also think that justice doesn't stop being justice just because the perpetrator is related to you. If anything, being willing to hold family accountable shows stronger ethical principles than looking the other way." My research continued to flourish. I published papers, presented at conferences, built a reputation entirely separate from the Harrison family scandal. In academic circles, I was Dr. Eden Harrison, rising star in forensic toxicology, not the daughter of the Lake Forest prescription fraud case. 3 years after the trial, I received a letter from Harper's prison, physical mail, forwarded from my old address to my current apartment in Palo Alto. The envelope sat on my counter for a week before I opened it. "Dear Eden," it began, and I almost stopped reading at the use of my actual name for the first time in writing. "I've had a lot of time to think about what led to me being here. My therapist says I need to take accountability for my actions and try to make amends where possible. I know I was a terrible mother to you. I know I prioritized the wrong things. Social status, material possessions, other people's opinions. I know I damaged you in ways that can't be easily fixed. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to know that I see now what I couldn't see then. You deserved better than I gave you. I'm sorry." I read it twice, looking for the manipulation, the hidden agenda, the request for something, but it seemed genuine, as far as prison reform letters could be genuine. Harper had been broken down by the system, forced into therapy, made to confront her own failures. I wrote back, the only letter I'd send, "Harper, I received your letter. I acknowledge your apology. It doesn't change anything between us, and it doesn't earn my forgiveness. But I hope you use your remaining time in prison to become someone better than who you were. Not for me, but for yourself. Don't contact me again. Eden." Short, clear, final. I mailed it and moved on. Harper was released after 4 years, 1 year early for good behavior. The Tribune ran a small piece about it, buried in the back pages. Former Lake Forest socialite released from federal prison, with a brief recap of the case. I only saw it because a colleague who followed local Chicago news sent me the link. I didn't respond. Harper's release was as irrelevant to my life as her imprisonment had been. 6 months after her release, Declan emailed me. "Mom is living in a halfway house in Aurora. She's working as a cashier at a grocery store. Her name is Poison in Lake Forest, so she can't go back. Dad won't speak to her. She's completely alone. I visit sometimes because I feel like someone should, but it's hard. She's not the person we grew up with. Prison changed her. Or maybe it just revealed who she really was without the social status mask." I didn't reply to that email either. My career continued its upward trajectory. Assistant professorship at Stanford, research grants, international collaborations. I dated someone from the computer science department. Someone kind and supportive who thought my family estrangement was healthy rather than cruel. We talked about the future without the weight of toxic family obligations. On what would have been my 27th birthday, 5 years after the graduation Harper missed, I received a package. Inside was a framed photo of me in my cap and gown from that day, one I'd posted on social media. A note attached, "I should have been there. I'm sorry I wasn't. I'm proud of everything you've become, even though I had nothing to do with it. Harper. I studied the photo for a long moment, remembering that day, the empty seats, the unanswered calls, the beginning of everything that followed. Then I put the frame in a drawer and went back to work. Harper tried a few more times over the years to establish contact. Birthday cards I never opened. Holiday emails I deleted unread. A friend request on social media I blocked immediately. She'd finally recognized my value. But it was decades too late, and only after I'd forced her to lose everything. I thought about the public comments I'd read years ago, the ones questioning whether revenge was worth it, whether I should have been the bigger person. Those people had never lived my life, never experienced the systematic neglect and cruelty, never been told they were worthless by the person who should have loved them most. They didn't understand that revenge wasn't about stooping to someone else's level. It was about consequences, accountability, and refusing to let abuse go unpunished just because it came from family. Harper destroyed my childhood with her negligence. I destroyed her carefully constructed false life with truth. We weren't the same. 10 years after my graduation, I'm an associate professor with tenure track, leading a research lab of 8 graduate students. My work on detection methods for prescription fraud has been adopted by multiple state medical boards. The irony of building my career on the same methods I used to expose my mother isn't lost on me. I'm engaged to my computer science partner. We're child-free by choice, both of us focused on careers we love. No obligations to family members who might disappoint us. No cycles to break because we're creating entirely new patterns. Sometimes students ask about my family during mentorship conversations. I tell them simply, we're estranged. Sometimes that's the healthiest choice. I don't elaborate. My past with Harper is documented in court records and newspaper articles if anyone cares to look, but it's not a story I tell casually. The other day, a student showed me a news article about prescription fraud prosecution increasing nationally. Your early research contributed to this, she said excitedly. The detection methods you published are being cited in legal cases across the country. She had no idea that my early research began as a personal investigation into my own mother's crimes, and she never would. That chapter was closed. I heard through distant relatives that Harper eventually left the halfway house, moved to a small town in Indiana, where nobody knew her history. She works at a library now, lives in a studio apartment, sees Declan twice a year when he makes the drive. Dad remarried and moved to Florida, cutting all ties with his past life in Lake Forest. The Harrison family scattered to the winds, broken irreparably by consequences that were long overdue. And me? I'm thriving in the ruins of their empire. Every research grant I win, every paper I publish, every student I mentor feels like proof that I was never the disappointing daughter they labeled me. I was always capable, always intelligent, always worthy of attention and respect. They just couldn't see it because they never looked. Harper wanted a daughter who would worship her unconditionally, enable her crimes, subordinate her own life to Harper's social climbing. Instead, she got a daughter who documented her crimes with scientific precision and handed her over to federal authorities. I'd say she should have been more careful what she wished for, but Harper never wished for me at all. That was always the problem. And ultimately, that was her downfall.